the economic system, Consumer Economics Unit 1. So in this unit, we're going to briefly take a look at some of the basic economic systems that exist throughout our world. We're going to be looking at traditional economy, market economy, command economy, mixed economy, and then within that, we're going to be looking at what is communism as well as socialism and capitalism as well. So in a traditional economy, we look at that as a system in which economic decisions are based on a society's values, culture, and customs. Some of the most familiar traditional economies would be, for example, Amish communities, Native American reservations, and also Inuit communities. Within those communities, we see that when it comes to determining where money goes and who gets it and how it's spent, it's based on that society's kind of religion and traditional customs and culture. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And market economy. Market economy is a system in which privately owned businesses operate and compete for profit with limited government regulation or interference. The market economy is very much what we practice in the United States, although we do have influence from other economies as well. So we're going to talk about it in a moment. That's why we have the American flag here on this slide. In the command economy, that is a system in which a central authority, usually the government, controls economic activities. And so we're going to take a look at some of those examples of command economies. And then in a mixed economy, you have what you would think. It's a combination of the market and command systems. Most of the economies around the world operate within the mixed economy, including our economy in the United States. Communism. Communism is a way of organizing a society in which the government owns the things that are used to make and transfer products. There is no privately owned property. And see, here we have pictured the dictator of North Korea, because North Korea is one of those communism countries that people are most familiar with. So if you live in a country where communism is practiced, you do not have the opportunity to do things such as own your own business, or oftentimes you may not even have the availability to pick what you want to do for a career or how you want to make money and things like that. Socialism. Oftentimes when people think of socialism, they think of the country of China. And socialism is a way of organizing a society in which major industries are owned and controlled by the government rather than by individual people and companies. So much like communism, within socialism you have a lot of control within the government, but the overall concept of socialism is so that everyone has equal opportunity to things. And so socialism typically is not looked at as being as harsh as communism. It's, like I said, it's the whole concept of everyone having equal access to things such as health care, education, and things like that. Capitalism. Capitalism is a system in which trade, industry, and the means of production are largely or entirely privately owned. Capitalism is the concept of basically competition. And we're going to look a little bit more into those concepts of competition that happen within capitalism. We in the United States are a capitalistic country. What determines what gets produced and all of that is private factors for the most part. So, whenever you have an economic system, the problem that you face is the issue of scarcity. So we're going to talk about the challenge of scarcity. All economic systems attempt to resolve the problem of unlimited needs and wants with and limited resources. What is a resource? A resource is any input used to generate other goods or services. Okay, so your resources can be not just physical things, it could also be the energy that's needed to generate goods and services, any of that, your resources. Okay, and then scarcity is a challenge of stretching resources to cover needs and wants. So no matter what type of economy you're in, no matter what type of situation you're in, you have the issue of scarcity. And so when you're dealing with those economic systems, you have to determine how are you going to meet those needs that are there, still understanding that there's not going to be enough for everyone to go around. Over your lifetime, your needs and wants will never end. What are some of the reasons for this? We'll talk about this in class when we go over the notes. Scarcity forces people, businesses, and governments to make choices in the use of resources and the needs to be met. So we're going to talk about the whole concept of needs versus wants when we talk about this together in class. Making choices involves evaluating two or more options and selecting just one. Okay, trying to figure out what your best option is going to be important in any situation you find yourself in. So what we consider that to be is trade-off. Trade-off is the item given up in order to gain something else. So for example, if you make the decision to go to school right away after graduating high school, you're giving up the opportunity to work full-time with the concept that once you finish your degree or you finish whatever training that you're in, because it doesn't always have to be college, that time you spent is going to be worth it because of the income that you're going to be able to make because of that education or training. Opportunity costs. That is the value of the best option or alternative given up. So the opportunity cost is kind of looking at trying to look at what you're sacrificing and how much it's worth, when you're trying to decide what that trade-off is going to be. Okay, so your opportunity costs. What is it going to cost you to take that opportunity? So it can be things like the time that you spend because of the opportunity, or it can be the concept of giving up your energy that you put forward, things like that. Opportunity cost applies to economic choices of families, businesses, and government as well as individuals. Weighing opportunity cost is an important decision-making tool. And it definitely should be something that's considered when you are making those big financial choices when it comes to whether you're going to pursue education, what kind of education you're going to pursue, what kind of training you're going to pursue, and all of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the class. Scarcity in economic systems. All societies are faced with scarcity and must make choices. Governments also make economic choices that affect everyone. At both a local level and federal level, governments make choices in allocating limited resources. Major political and economic decisions center on how to divide limited national resources given unlimited national needs. Okay, so some of those needs are going to include crime control. So how are you going to spend money on crime control? How much you're going to spend towards crime control? And then even the individual concept of what are you going to spend that money on? Is it going to be more police patrol? Is it going to be more high-tech surveillance? How are you going to spend that money for crime control? Healthcare, environmental protection, education, national defense, aid to the poor and homeless as well. The scarcity of resources leads to three problems for all societies. Okay, so you have to look at these three problems to determine what you're going to do with those resources that you do have available to you. what and how much to produce, how to allocate resources in producing goods and services, how to divide the goods and services how to divide the goods and services produced. The way that a society solves these problems defines its economic system. Okay, so in other words, when a society is looking at solving those three problems, how they solve it determines what type of economic system they can be defined by. So if these decisions are made by the country's religious leader, for example, the nation's economic system is probably a traditional economy. So in other words, the person that's in leadership is typically looked at as a religious leader. And so when you have that situation, typically you're looking at a traditional economy. If a central planning authority decides, such as a government, then the economic system is probably a command economy. So let's not get that confused by like what we think of as government, because remember, government can be looked at several different ways, whether it's a monarchy, a democracy, a dictatorship, okay? But whoever those people are in leadership, they are the ones to make decisions, not influenced by other things, such as voters and all that. It is completely up to them, and they're the ones making that decision. And then in the U.S., free enterprise system or free market or mixed economy, kind of all those things are used to describe the U.S. These decisions are made primarily by market forces, meaning market forces would be what people are buying, what people are selling, how much people are buying or selling those things. That's what determines our economic system and how it works. Qualities of a market. So now we are looking at the concept of that free market system. There's 4 qualities of a market economy. Number 1 is private ownership. Number 2 is profit. Number 3 is free choice. Number 4 is competition. Okay? In order for an economy to be truly considered a market economy, you have to have these 4 qualities. The profit motive, let's talk about that first. Profit is the total amount of money earned after expenses are subtracted from income. So keep in mind, for example, you open a business. On the first day, you make $3,000. That is not your profit, because after you've made that money, you then have to pay for the building that your business is being run out of. You have to pay for the materials that you use to make whatever it is that you're selling. You may have to pay for the lights in that building that you use. And I just said that, didn't I? But any other factor that goes into the building, and then maybe even your employees as well. That is your true profit, the amount of money earned after expenses are subtracted from income. The profit motive drives businesses to produce goods and services to meet consumer demand. Okay, so that profit, wanting to make money. Obviously, anyone that opens a business, even if they're doing it to kind of help others, they still are motivated to make money. Free economic choice. In a free market economy, you choose things such as what you will buy, where you will buy it, how much you are willing to pay, whether you will use cash or credit as well, and whether you will spend or save. So that's the beauty of having that free market economy. You get to make these decisions. If you decide that you want to have a black sweater, you can go to Walmart and get that sweater. You can go to Target and get that sweater. You can go to Macy's. You can go to JCPenney. You can go to wherever it is that you want. And then you can also decide how much you're willing to pay for it, how you're going to pay for it, and then maybe even make a decision to not spend your money. That will go with that whole concept of whether you will spend or save. Businesses respond to consumer choices by producing and selling the goods and services that consumer wants. A free market economy also allows you to choose how you want to earn your money. So that kind of goes back to the concept of deciding what kind of job that you want to have, where you want to work, how long you want to work. All of that is your choice as a consumer within a free market economy. If you were to live in a command society, you wouldn't have those choices often. You may not get to choose what you want to do for work or what type of employment opportunities you have. A lot of times you're told that this is what you're going to do and this is how much money you're going to make by doing that. A free market economy is also ideal for starting your own business, such as entrepreneurship. That's why the whole American dream is so popular. America is looked at as one of those places where you can come and make things for yourself or make your own type of happiness, because you can open up a business and sell what you want and have that flexibility to work your way up. So in class, we're going to talk about some of the major companies in the United States that were started by entrepreneurs. You can think of, most popular people think of Microsoft, they think of Apple, Facebook. There's so many more, and we're going to talk a little bit about those in the talk a little bit about those when we're in class. Competition, also needed in a free market economy. Economic competition occurs when two or more sellers offer similar goods and services for sale in the marketplace. Competition encourages competence and efficiency in the production and sales of goods and services. What are the laws of supply and demand? Supply is the amount of a product or service producers are willing to provide. Okay, that is the supply. Demand, on the other hand, is the quantity of a product or service that consumers are willing to buy. Okay, so supply is the amount of product or service producers are willing to provide. Demand would be the quantity of a product or service consumers are willing to buy. The law of demand says that the higher the price of a good or service, the less its consumers will demand. Once again, the law of demand says that the higher the price of a good or service, the less its consumers will demand. So in other words, the more expensive an item is, not necessarily in terms of sale price, but the more expensive it is to buy something like a larger item like a car, the less its consumers will demand. So in other words, people aren't going out and buying a car every day because it is a large expense. That's the law of demand. The law of supply says that the higher the price of a good or services, the higher the quantity supplied by producers. Once again, the higher the price of a good or service, the higher the quantity supplied by producers. So this is looking at from the business side. I like to think of the law of demand being what benefits consumers, and the law of supply is what benefits businesses. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in class as well. Equilibrium. The laws of supply and demand work together. When demand and supply are relatively balanced, the market is said to be in equilibrium. Equilibrium is the approximate point at which the quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded. Equilibrium is more of an idea than a reality. It's very difficult for market forces to line up so that that equilibrium is there. So what we have to think about is the fact that there's different conditions that are going to cause a price to increase. For example, if there is a large frost or winter storm in Florida and all of the orange trees freeze and they're not able to produce oranges, then the price of orange juice is going to go up. And when it comes to what conditions may cause a price to decrease, you want to think about it opposite. If there is a really good harvest of corn for a summer in the state of Illinois, and there's lots of corn to go around, well, then corn is going to be at a lower price in the grocery store. Demand in the marketplace determines what and how much is produced. Demand is expressed by the spending choices of consumers, businesses, and governments. These choices determine what and how much producers will bring to the marketplace. The forces of supply and demand in the job market also largely determine how to divide the goods and services produced. Okay, so for example, if there happens to be a teacher shortage in the state of Illinois, which there actually is right now, we're not really necessarily seeing it affect us directly, but if we can't find teachers to teach in the schools, that means that you have things that may happen, such as larger class sizes. So more students in the class because there's not enough teachers to go around and things like that. And so when that's why the economy is affected by the job market and the job availability and all those things as well. When there's more people working and more people making money, there's more money that's going to be going into the economy. And that is the end. We will review these concepts in class and expand upon them more so that you all have an understanding of the basic principles of economic systems.